Today I want to talk about tips and tricks to help you memorize the unit circle. If you like this video, make sure you like and share it, and also subscribe for updates. Every term my students really seem to struggle with memorizing the key values on the unit circle. So one of the tricks that you can do is called a hand trick. And by using your hand, which has a thumb and 4 fingers, you mimic one of the quadrants. I'm going to focus on the first quadrant today, and then we'll take all of the values we find on the first quadrant, and because of the symmetry of the unit circle, we'll be able to transfer those values. So let's go to the first quadrant. So because our hand has a thumb and 4 fingers, we can place that down on the first quadrant, and we can easily associate each one of those with one of our special angles. Now, assuming that we know what those special angles are, our fingers and our thumb can help us to identify the ordered pairs that go along with those special angles. So let me begin by first filling out what those special angles are. Where my thumb is located is 0 degrees, which of course is 0 radians. And then one finger up from there would be a 30-degree angle, and that's represented by pi over 6. A 45-degree angle, which is represented by pi over 4, a 60-degree angle, which is represented by pi over 3, and then a 90-degree angle, which is represented, of course, by pi over 2. So what I'm going to do is fold down a finger or a thumb at a time, and the finger above and the fingers below will help me identify what the ordered pair is. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Let me look at pi over 3. Now look at the finger that's associated with pi over 3. I'm going to blur that out. So now it's blurred out. And if you look above that finger, there is the one pinky. And if you look below, you will see that there are 2 fingers and a thumb. All right, so one thing above and 3 things below. Let me show you what that means. That ordered pair is always going to be the square root of something over 2, comma, the square root of something over 2. Now that something, for cosine, or that first position, we said that there was one pinky above, so that's going to be a 1. And below, we said that there were 3 digits, 2 fingers and a thumb, so that's going to be 3. That's how you're going to memorize what that ordered pair is. Now, of course, we can simplify that because we know that the square root of 1 is just 1. So we call this ordered pair 1/2 the square root of 3 over 2. All right, now you should be wondering, okay, is that going to work for all the rest of them? Well, let's go ahead and take a look. So now you'll notice that I just blurred out my pinky. And so let's take a look at what's going on there. Blurring out my pinky, let me do the same thing that I did before. It's going to be the square root of something over 2, comma, the square root of something over 2. Now, how many digits are above the pinky? Well, there's none, so I'm going to call that 0. And then how many digits are there below the pinky? Well, there's 3 fingers and a thumb, and so that's 4. If I simplify that ordered pair, it becomes square root of 0 is 0, so 0 divided by 2 is 0, and the square root of 4 is 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. And there's that ordered pair. Now, believe it or not, this continues working. Let me show you. So I'm going to unblur the pinky, and I'm going to instead blur my pointer finger, which is at 30 degrees or pi over 6. You might pause the video now and see if you can do this one on your own. But if you want to see me work through it, it's going to be the square root of something over 2, the square root of something over 2. Now, what is that something? Above that pointer finger are 3 fingers, and so that's going to be the square root of 3. And then, of course, below that pointer finger is my thumb, and so that's 1. If I simplify this, and by the way, notice that the ordered pair that I just put there is the reverse of the ordered pair for pi over 3, which makes sense based off of things that we've also done before. This is going to become the square root of 3 over 2, comma, 1/2. So that works pretty well. Let's do one more together. How about 0 degrees? All right, so I'm going to try the same thing. I'm going to put square root of something over 2, square root of something over 2. Now, How many fingers are above that thumb? There's 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I'm going to put a 4, and then below that there are 0. And so this simplifies to the square root of 4, which is 2 over 2, which is 1, and the square root of 0 over 2, which is 0. And sure enough, this ordered pair is represented by 1, 0. Now, what you may or may not have learned at this point is that in a unit circle, it is that first value that makes up the cosine of the angle, and it's that second value that makes up the sine of the angle. If you haven't learned that yet, don't worry, you will, but before you can learn that, you have to know what these ordered pairs are. Now, I should leave pi over 4 up to you, but we will maybe note here that if I were to fold down that middle finger, I would have 2 digits above and I'd have 2 digits below. And so what ordered pair would that get me? That would get me the square root of something over 2, the square root of something over 2, and because I have 2 above and 2 below, there's the square root of 2 and the square root of 2, which matches everything that we've talked about. Now let's look at another way of memorizing the unit circle, and this one involves looking at a pattern. Here is the unit circle. We're going to focus on the first quadrant again because of that symmetry that I talked about earlier. Here is the first quadrant, and you heard me say several times before, square root of something over 2, square root of something over 2. Let me show you how that applies also here. So if you take a look at down below where we had that 0-degree angle in the 0 radians, right? Square root of something over 2, square root of something over 2. I am going to put a 4 right here, and I'm going to put a 0 right here. Okay, so I'm not going to simplify it yet, but just stick with me. Let's go to the next one. Square root of something over 2, square root of something over 2. Well, if I decrease the 4 that I saw on 0 degrees, so if I decrease that, that becomes a 3. And if I increase the 0, it becomes a 1. All right, so I'm just following this progression. Let me keep going. Now I'm going to decrease from 4 to 3. I'm going to go to 2. And from 0 to 1, I'm going to increase and go to 2. Let's try it again. So starting with the first position, I went from square root of 4 to square root of 3 to square root of 2. So now it's going to be square root of 1. And starting with the y values or the sign, I went from 0, 1, 2. Now I'm going to do square root of 3. And finally, the last one, you can imagine that this is going to be 0 and this is going to be 4. So I could simplify all of those. Let me just go ahead and do that to convince you. Let's see, square root of 4 over 2 is 2 over 2, which is 1, 0. And square root of 3 over 2, 1/2, that works. Can't simplify that 45-degree angle, so square root of 2 over 2, square root of 2 over 2 stays. For the 60-degree angle, that square root of 1 reduces to 1/2, and square root of 3 over 2. And then finally, see if I can squeeze this in here, the square root of 0 is 0, so 0 divided by 2 is 0, and the square root of 4 is 2, 2 over 2 is 1. So sure enough, that seems to work. So there's this really neat pattern for cosine, you might say. We start with the larger number and then slowly decrease. That's what's happening for the cosine. For the sine, we're starting with 0 and we're increasing. So it's just the opposite pattern. Now, I don't know if that'll help you remember it, but I feel as though it's a pretty nice visual to see the symmetry that's going on. And here's a completed first quadrant. And this is, I've made this look a little bit nicer. You can not only see all the degrees and the radian measures, but you can see the ordered pairs. What I also like about this graph a lot is that it shows, for example, something like square root of 3 over 2, 1/2, that is coming from a horizontal length of the square root of 3 over 2 and a vertical height of 1/2. And I think it really drives home the idea that those ordered pairs, which represent a sine and a cosine, actually represent lengths on these triangles. the final thing is to take everything we just learned about the first quadrant and use the symmetry of the circle to apply it to the rest of the quadrants. And here's what I mean by that. Let me pick on pi over 6. We said that pi over 6 is the ordered pair square root of 3 over 2, comma, 1/2. Now, anything that deals with a pi over 6, let me just show you. Here's pi over 6. If I draw a line straight across, straight down, straight across, and straight up, every single one of these pi over 6s are going to have ordered pairs of square root of 3 over 2, comma, 1/2. The only difference is that because we're in quadrant 2, we know we have negative x values and we have positive y values. So instead of it being positive square root of 3 over 2, we're going to put in the negative. For 7 pi over 6, again, you're going to say, well, I know it's the square root of 3 over 2, comma, 1/2, but I'm in the third quadrant, so negative and a negative. For 11 pi over 6, again, square root of 3 over 2, comma, 1/2, but I'm in the fourth quadrant, so I know that my y value, or the 1/2, has to be a negative. We can do that for all of the other values as well. If we take a look at pi over 4, there's pi over 4 to 3 pi over 4 to 5 pi over 4 to, where's that taking me? 7 pi over 4 and straight back up. So in other words, we're either making squares or rectangles. All of these vertices are going to have the same ordered pairs, only taking into consideration what quadrant they're in, making them positive or negative. I'll let you do that on your own. The final one is pi over 3. So if I draw a line across to pi over 3, that takes me to 2 pi over 3, and down to 4 pi over 3, over to 5 pi over 3, and back up. There's my rectangle. So that pi over 3 we know has an ordered pair of 1/2 square root of 3 over 2. Another vertice that's on this rectangle, let me just go across over here to 4 pi over 3, that's also going to be 1/2, comma, square root of 3 over 2. But because we're in quadrant 3, and we know in quadrant 3 we have negative values for both the x and the y value, then that 1/2 and that square root of 3 over 2 both turn negative. So this pattern continues all the way through, and I'll let you finish that on your own. I hope you got something out of this video. Maybe one of these things I talked about will help you to remember the values on the unit circle. Please comment below for any other video topics that you might be interested in learning about, and also follow us on our website, anyonecanbeamathperson.com. Thanks for watching.